Number 360 will be our invitation song tonight, Standing on the Promises. It's a blessing to be here this evening. I hope that everyone is enjoying the air conditioner. It is rather warm outside. And I tell you, this morning I looked on the thermostat there and it said 74 degrees. And it's just having a hard time getting everything cooled off this morning for some reason, but it's doing okay this afternoon. Pray that our air conditioner holds out for 2 more weeks, or one more full week. Looking forward to getting in our new building. Tony asked me to mention something about that. Work day this upcoming Tuesday night, I suppose, to box things up. If you've got any tubs or boxes or anything that we can put some books in and haul them over to the new building, you're welcome to do that. Also, after this upcoming week, the fire hydrant should be installed, the asphalt should be done, and we should be ready week after this upcoming week to move, start getting stuff over there. We'll assemble here on Wednesday night. Not this week and next week. And then, Lord willing, everything will be over there and set up and ready to go for August 31st. That's what we're shooting for, if all things goes according to plan. Everything right now is on schedule to do that. Of course, you never know, but that's what we're anticipating. And by the end of this week, we will have a firm grasp, and we'll know by the end of this week. So we'll be able to inform everyone as the week goes on what's going on. So good to see everybody tonight. This evening, we're going to continue our study in the book of Ecclesiastes. So please turn in your Bibles there with me. Ecclesiastes chapter 9. And we're going to be looking at verses 13 down through chapter 10 and verse 20. So we're going to be covering quite a bit of ground. But the things that are mentioned in this text are things that fit together, and some short proverbs and just some quick applications of those things. And the lesson will be yours this evening. We have been in the book of Ecclesiastes now for a while, and going back to chapter 7, Solomon emphasizes the need to be wise. I mean, if we avoid extremes, and I realize that we must stay with truth, but truth is narrow. And you can fall off that log on either side. You can fall off on the right side and the left. So avoid extremes, stay with truth, and you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. Be submissive to authority, even if that authority is abusive. Still be submissive. And then in chapter 9 and verses 1 through 12, our time is limited. All of us will die, so use your time wisely. Serve God. Serve God. And as we get then to verse 13, what we see is that wisdom is exalted and pointed out that it is more valuable than strength and might, but it can be tainted. It can be ruined by just a little bit of folly. And those who rule, who are foolish, do much harm. Folly in high places is bad for everybody. So we need wise leaders. And true wisdom is to listen to God. That's the most important thing. Divine wisdom, heavenly wisdom, of course, will help us to live a life that is not only beneficial to God, but also much easier for us. So those are the kind of things we're going to be looking at tonight. Beginning in verse 13, Solomon writes, "This wisdom I have also seen under the sun, and it seemed great to me. There was a little city with few men in it. And a great king came against it, besieged it, and built great snares around it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that same poor man. Then I said, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard, rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Dead flies putrefy the perfumer's ointment, and cause it to give off a foul odor. So does a little folly to one respected for wisdom and honor. A wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart is at his left. Even when a fool walks along the way, he lacks wisdom, and he shows everyone that he is a fool. If the spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post, for conciliation pacifies great offenses. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, as an error proceeding forth from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, while the rich sit in a lowly place. I have seen servants on horses, while princes walk on the ground like servants. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through a wall will be bitten by a serpent. He who quarries stones may be hurt by them, and he who splits wood may be endangered by it. If the axe is dull, and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength, but wisdom brings success. A serpent may bite when it is not charmed. The babbler is no different. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool shall swallow him up. The words of his mouth begin with foolishness, and the end of his talk is raving madness. A fool also multiplies words. No one knows what is to be. Who can tell him what will be after him? The labor of fools wearies them, for they do not even know that they go to the city. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and your princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobles, and your princes feast at the proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. Because of laziness, the building decays, and through idleness of hands, the house leaks. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes merry, but money answers everything. Do not curse the king, even in your thought. Do not curse the rich, even in your bedroom. For a bird of the air may carry your voice, and a bird in flight may tell the matter. Okay, we got some proverbs there at the end, and we'll go through some of those. But as we've already pointed out, as we've gone through this book, wisdom is very important and very valuable, and we should all be pursuing it. As we pursue life, and as Solomon here is examining the things under the sun, he's making comparisons as to what is best, how men should live their lives in such a way that brings success for them while they're here. And of course, most importantly, keeping God at the forefront of our minds and hearts, focusing on what is eternal instead of what is temporal. But nevertheless, we are currently in a temporal world. And so how do we live here now? That's really what Solomon is investigating, and he gives us some very good advice and instruction in this text. First of all, he mentions a small city. Is this city is besieged by a great king? Well, actually, this happened. Something very similar to this happened. There was one wise man in this text, but there's a text, and it was read by Kelvin a little earlier in 2 Samuel chapter 20. There was a wise woman who called for Joab. Joab and the army of David was tracking down a man named Sheba, who had rebelled against the king. And he had taken refuge in this city. So Joab and the army of David comes against this city, Abel of Beth Maacah, and he's fixing to take the city. And this wise woman steps up, wants to talk to Joab, and just lets him know that you wouldn't destroy a bunch of innocent people, Israelites. We're with you. And so Joab made the point, I'm just after Sheba. So how did they avoid war? The people cut off Sheba's head and threw it over the wall. So that stopped the war. So you had a wise woman who took it into her hands to save the city. The king didn't, the king of the city or the ruler of the city didn't do that. A woman did that. We don't even know what that woman's name was. Kind of like in the text here in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Yet no man remembered that same poor man, soon forgotten and thought of no more. People who are not leaders, they are not people that are important. That doesn't mean they're dumb. As rulers or leaders in any situation and circumstance, you can apply this to the church. Elders need to listen to people. Elders need to listen to the congregation. Sadly, though, many don't, and that's the way it is in the world. People do, as they are leading, they think they have all the answers. A lot of times, it's just the common folks who have the best answers and who have the solutions to big problems, and they need to be heard. But sadly, they are discounted. Wisdom is better than strength, and that's the solution or the conclusion that Solomon reaches. Wisdom can accomplish what physical strength and resources cannot. It's not always the biggest team, and we talked about this, in fact, last time. The race is not always to the swift, is it? It's not always the biggest and the meanest and the baddest football team that wins the football game. Underdogs win. They have a better game plan. They play smarter. Well, that's true in life, in real life, too. Wisdom can overcome strength. We need wisdom. The importance of wise counsel. Sadly, many people who are wise are not actually listened to. You don't have to be a ruler, again, to be wise, but as it points out here in verse 16, nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised and his words are not heard. Why? Why are poor men's wisdom? Why would the poor man's wisdom not be heard, not be listened to? Well, he's considered to be a nobody. Truth is truth. I don't care where it comes from. Wisdom is wisdom. It needs to be pooling our ideas together, coming up to, as we examine the truth and the evidence, coming up to a consensus based on what is right and what is good. Sometimes the most unexpected person comes up with the best idea you ever heard in your life. You never know. We ought to be humble enough to listen to other people. Also, in verse 16 through 18, as it goes on, wise counsel is usually given quietly, behind the scenes, calmly and deliberately. It is the squeaking wheel that always gets the most attention. Why? It's the loudmouth that people listen to. Why? The quiet, calm, deliberate, wise man behind the scenes giving instruction, sadly, is not the one that's usually listened to. It's the loudest. It's the one that's causing the most trouble. And this text also emphasizes that that's how fools get people on their side. They gaslight, they shame, they do all these things to make people, afraid to go against them. They manipulate other people. And, it is so sad, but it is also very true. You can try to talk to people about the truth, and it seems like you're getting nowhere with the truth. It seems like the truth is just getting its boots on by the time error and false doctrine has done made a trip around the world 2 or 3 times. False teaching travels faster. It's listened to. Why? Well, there are several reasons for that. One is, of course, that most people don't want the truth. That's a sad reality. But that's the point that Solomon is making here. And wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. The Bible mentions this actually a lot. One small thing can ruin something good. I don't remember when it was, but it was a long time ago. Denise and I went into Hardee's, and she knows the story now. She knows where I'm going with this. She ordered a salad, and she opened it up, and, oh, look, it's got raisins. Oh, that ain't a raisin. It was not a raisin. It was a roach in her salad. She's never eaten a salad at Hardee's again since. And you may not either after that story. That's all it takes. Do you think she's going to eat it? Would you eat it after you found a roach in it? You get a fly in your milk. You're going to just take the fly out and then drink the milk? I don't think so. I don't think so. A little folly can damage much good. Something small and insignificant as a fly. Flies putrefy the perfumer's ointment. I actually preached on this text a long time ago, and I had somebody come up to me after the lesson, and they asked me point blank, am I the fly? I'm not preaching at anybody for certain, but listen, we need to realize a little leaven leavens the whole lump. We all need to recognize the damage that just a little folly can do. That's why we need to be personally on guard for ourselves. I mean, a little folly can damage a man's reputation. Just one act of indiscretion can destroy a person's life. Be careful. It's all it takes. One mess up. All the good that a man may have done in his life can be ruined by one moment of folly. So, likewise, one foolish act can mar a good reputation built over a lifetime. And we need to make sure that, examine ourselves and always be. Now, we do need to be forgiving. That's something else that we all need to realize. All of us, any of us can make a mistake. Any of us can mess up. In fact, we all do mess up. All of us do. So we need more patience and mercy and love and kindness, and all of that. A little sin can destroy much good. So, Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 2, a wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart is at his left. What in the world does that mean? The NASB translates that verse this way. A wise man's heart directs him towards the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're left-handed, you're a fool. That's not what that's saying. But we're talking about two different ways to go. There's the right way and there is the wrong way. And so we need to go the right direction. Well, a wise man's heart will lead him in the right direction. And that is the point. And by the way, we hear all the time, well, I just follow my heart. And you need to follow your heart. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We don't follow our heart. We guide our own heart. Our heart is our direction of choice is a choice we make. We don't just follow our heart. We see what's right and we do what's right. We follow what's right. Love is a choice that we make. Wife says, well, I just don't love my husband anymore. I just fell out of love. Love is a choice. What does the Bible command you to do? Love your husband. You don't have a choice in that matter. If you're going to be obedient to God, you have to love your husband. Your love is not conditioned on whether he's perfect or not, by the way. So a wise man's heart is in his right hand, that it leads him towards what is right. A wise person has the quality of heart and mind that will protect him from danger. Something that wisdom does is that it looks down the road. Now, a fool doesn't think about the consequences of his choices and actions. Doesn't think long term, what's down the road. All they think about is what's right in front of my face right now, what's making me happy today. But what's making you happy today may destroy your soul for eternity. need to think long term. What you enjoy right now, if that's not helping you get to heaven, leading you to heaven, then you need to stop it. You need to think long term, spiritual. So the wise man chooses which way his mind goes. He chooses where his thoughts will be placed, where his values are. We choose what's important to us. Will we choose the things of God, or will we choose the things of selfishness and materialism? What are we going to choose? The wise man chooses to set his mind on the things of God, learning the will of God, understanding the will of God, and then practicing the will of God, applying that to his life. That's what Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 21 point out to us. We are to walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Now, walking circumspectly means that we walk very carefully. We're on guard against anything that would bring harm to us. Our spiritual walk in particular. That's what we're looking out for. But fools, as they walk along the way, they show everybody that they're a fool. How do they do that? Well, by their actions, by their failure to consider their consequences. And they do things that just can. And why is it that so many people just never seem to learn? They just make the same mistakes over and over and over. What are they demonstrating? We need to be wise, and yet again, we all make mistakes. You know, we are to walk in the light as he is in the light. 1 John chapter 1, beginning in verse 5, God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. And then we are to walk in the light as he is in the light. Well, someone says, well, you know, what about sin? We sin. One sin is not a walk. That's true. But one sin is not in the light. It is a step in the darkness. Question, where does the next step go? What is the next step going to be? Is the next step going to continue in darkness? Now, what am I doing? I'm walking in darkness. Where does my next step go? We all make mistakes. Question is, what are we going to do with those mistakes? What are we even going to do with our sin? We need to repent of it. We need to turn back to God. If the spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post. Okay, what about folly in high places? I tell you what, I remember Brother A.W. Goff telling this story. He's talking about raising kids in this lesson I remember him preaching. And he wanted to know why we train up our children to be doctors and lawyers. We train up our children to be professors, astronauts or whatever, you know, where they make a lot of money. But little Johnny over here, he's just this dummy in class. I know, he'll be a preacher. That's what he'll be. Okay, what about the smart ones? Where are our priorities as parents? Why is it that we have so many rulers that are so ungodly? Why is it that people are ruling who care nothing about what's right? Sadly, a lot of rulers are in that category. The spirit of the ruler rises against you. Let's say that the king is angry with you. What do? Well, you don't run away, because that's just gonna. Now you're rebellion. Now you're like Sheba. Don't be like that. Okay. You need to be humble, respond with humility, and you need to act in a way that's going to bring reconciliation. That doesn't mean that always works, by the way. These are general principles. All right? The king may still be angry with you, and he may say, off with your head. But more than likely, you're going to be much better off if you just are humble, accept your punishment, whatever that may be, and do what's right and plead for mercy. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, as an error proceeding from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, while the rich sit in a lowly place. Those who are qualified to be leaders are not leading, and those who are not qualified to be leading, well, they're the ones who want to lead. And how many of you would like to be president of the United States? Me either, Ellen. Me, no. I wouldn't want to be president. I mean, but who does? Sadly, people want to be president who are not qualified to be president, and they're the ones who are elected to be president, because people who are truly qualified, they know, they stay away from that kind of thing. Sadly, those principles also are seen holding true in the church. People who are qualified to lead, people who are qualified to serve as a leader, will not accept the responsibility because they know what happens to a lot of leaders. Fools are often placed in positions of power, and that means bad things are going to happen. Things don't work very well. You look at some of these. Who was it that said once something along the lines of, if we had terrible leaders or terrible foolish people in Congress. Wait a minute, I repeat myself. Foolish people, as same thing as being. I think that was Lewis, C.S. Lewis, if I'm not mistaken. But we look and think about people who are qualified. Why will they not lead? Well, it's not a popular position. I understand that. None of us would want to be president. We all understand that. But somebody's got to lead. And when ungodly people lead, things that are bad will happen. Unqualified rulers are worse than having rulers at all. I've even made the point before, to have an unqualified eldership, it'd be better not to have elders than to have men who are not qualified to be elders. And so, verse 8, he who digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through. So we got several proverbs now, back to back to back. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through a wall will be bitten by a serpent. What in the world does that mean? Well, if your heart is set on revenge, you're trying to entrap those who are your enemies. Look out. Guess what's going to happen? You're the one that's going to actually fall into the pit. It will come back and get you sooner or later. And those who break through a wall will be bitten by a serpent. Well, cracks in the walls, maybe serpents are hiding there. There's some question about exactly what this means, but it seems to me that we're still trying to take shortcuts. We're trying to do something that we ought not to do. Bad things happen to people who do bad things. We need wisdom. We need caution. We need to think about what we're doing. Be careful. We need to respect boundaries. And this is one of my favorites. If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success. I have to study a lot harder than most people do. Because I understand I've got a dull axe. My focus isn't what it ought to be a lot of times. I've got a dull axe, and it takes more work. Well, sharpen the axe. I've tried. It doesn't work very well. My brain doesn't seem to want to get sharper. So I have to use more strength. When I was in shop class, I learned something very important. You know what the most dangerous hand tool is? What? A dull what? A dull chisel in particular. A dull wood chisel is the most dangerous hand tool that there is. A dull wood chisel. Why? You think, well, it's dull. It ain't going to cut you. And that's partly true, I guess, but that's what I was taught. It does take more strength, and you do mess stuff up trying to use a dull wood chisel. A dull blade on a saw makes your cutting a lot harder. You can't cut straight. Well, the same thing, of course, is true in life. We need to think about, working smarter, not harder, is the idea. But working right, thinking wisely, taking precautions, making plans, using God's wisdom, divine wisdom, to make our choices. We need to sharpen our minds with the Word of God. A serpent may bite when it is not charmed, or before it is charmed. The babbler is no different. The babbler and the serpent here are compared to each other. Now, a good snake charmer, it's amazing what they do. And I think they're nuts myself. That's crazy. Sit there and get that close to a snake. You know why? Because snakes are unpredictable. You don't know what a snake's going to do. Why play with a snake in the first place? I think that's kind of foolish. Eventually, you're going to get bit. And the babbler is no different. You try to argue with the babbler. It's not going to go very well. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool shall swallow him up. Speaking graciously, thoughtfully, lifting people up with your words instead of tearing them down, instead of criticizing them all the time. Words that are destructive and harmful and hurtful, that tells you something about how we're thinking. If that's the kind of words that were coming out of our mouth. The words of his mouth begin with foolishness, and the end of his talk is raving madness. Things doesn't get better. A fool also multiplies words. No man knows what is to be. Who can tell him what will be after him? There's a guy that watches our live streams on a regular basis, and there have been several of our live streams that he has written a book on. He responds and he'll post it on Facebook, and it's page after page after page explaining why we're so wrong. And I can't understand what the guy's trying to say most of the time. It's just a lot of words. When the truth is right there in front of his face. Just believe God's word, accept that, instead of trying to argue around and argue it away. That's what most people try to do. It takes a lot more to try to discount truth and nullify what the truth is. Trying to talk around it and explain false doctrine takes a lot of words to cloud the issue. That's what a lot of people try to do, though. The labor of fools wearies them, for they do not even know how to go to the city. So, fool talks a lot. He babbles a lot. He talks about things he does not understand. That's why he talks a lot. The foolishness of the prognosticator. Now, okay, we've got weathermen who are actually, a lot of times they're pretty good in being able to forecast the weather. Well, they're very good at looking at the trends and how the weather systems work and all of that. So they can do a pretty good job. But you know what gets me is like people sitting around trying to figure out what the Razorback football record is going to be this year. Is it going to be 4-7? Is it going to be 5-7? Is it going to be 4-8? What's it going to be? I don't know, and you don't either. And what good is it even talking about that kind of stuff? And it's interesting to me how they can get on live on their podcast and on their radio programs, and they can talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours about stuff that they have no idea how it's going to work out. Just over and over and over. Well, okay, when it comes to the things of God, we It's not that complicated. We don't know what's going to happen. That's why we need to be serving God today. But I can tell you, there was a sign there in Pine Bluff on Highway 79 where this fortune teller actually had a house there on Highway 79. This big sign was advertising her business. So I wanted to go in there so often and tell her what her future was. I knew what her future was if she didn't repent. I wanted to go in there and tell her that one day, but I never did. Nobody knows what's coming in the future except the things that God himself has said are coming in the future. I know one day I'm going to stand before God and give an account for the things that I've done in my body. I know that. I know for a fact that the Lord is coming back to judge his people. So verse 16, woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobles and your princes feast at the proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. So you've got the contrast between a leader who is unprepared, inexperienced. He's thrown into it. That's a recipe for terrible things to happen. Where on the other hand, you've got someone who has prepared all of his life to sit in that seat of authority. And he is trained. There's a difference. Verse 18, because of laziness, the building decays, and through idleness of hands, the house leaks. The number one cause of damage to a home is water. Whether it's coming in from the roof or it's coming in from underneath. Moisture can come in, condensation, very damaging to your house. And as we let moisture continue to eat away at our home, before you know it, you've got mold and you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars to repair what has been damaged by a little bit of water. Wise thing is, if you see something that's messed up, fix it. Have it fixed immediately. You're going to save yourself a lot of money. But we put things off. We delay. And through the idleness of hands, the house leaks and it rots and it falls down. A feast is made for laughter and wine makes merry, but money answers everything. I told a guy just this week, he was worried about his crawl space under his house, and he was wanting to know how to fix it. And I told him, I said, first of all, you need to get under there and you need to lay a good vapor barrier down, keep the moisture from making your crawl space even worse than it is now. And the biggest problem is under his house, it was lower than the exterior of the house. And so any water, and this is a real flat piece of property, so water is just going to naturally seep under there. And he said, well, is there a way to stop the water from getting under there completely? I said, yeah, how much money you got? That matters, Money is a defense for everything. It's not going to get you to heaven. It can't buy true happiness. It can't buy love, right? As the Beatles say, it can't do those kinds of things. But money is a help. I mean, you don't have money, you can't pay your bills. You can't eat. So money is the answer for the things in this life. You have to have it. So be wise in that. Do not curse the king even in your thought. Now, the king can't read your mind, but understand something, that eventually what's in your mind comes out where? It eventually comes out of your mouth. And you're going to tell, I'll say, hey, James, don't tell anybody this. I don't think James is going to go off gossiping, but who knows? It might leak out somewhere along the way. He doesn't think somebody's listening. And, who knows? A little birdie might tell somebody. Now, we use that same figure of speech, don't we? We know birds can't talk, but you know what the point is in this. A lot of things. Wisdom. Be wise. Think about the consequences of what you do. Realize that foolishness is detrimental. It's detrimental to our happiness and success in life. The things that we have in this world are certainly temporary, and everything we need to be focused on is the eternal, that's spiritual, not the things that are here now, but the things that are eternal. But while we are here in this world, we need to practice wisdom in our lives. We realize, I hope, that just a little bit of folly can ruin our lives. So be wise. Folly in high places is just bad for everybody. So we need to understand, and reality is most rulers are not wise. So there's going to be always a cause for problems and trouble. Much sorrow in life can be avoided if we just watch our mouth, watch how we treat other people, live a holy life, seek to serve God, and seek to understand His will, and share that with others in a loving, kind way. It's amazing how much better our life will be. Bad choices will ruin the rest of your life if you're not careful. And true wisdom, of course, is to hear God, to listen to Him, seek out His knowledge, seek out His wisdom, apply that to your life, dutifully obey Him. You may not understand the why. No, God's wiser than you are. Our ways don't work. God's ways always do. Follow God's way. Seek God's will. Maybe you're here tonight and you never rendered obedience to the gospel of Jesus Christ. You have that opportunity. Make the wise choice. If you're not a child of God, come to Him. That's the wise thing to do. Get your life set on the right course. Go in the right direction. If we can help you tonight, if you've never been baptized into Christ, let us help you do that. If you're a child of God and you've fallen away, you've got sin in your life, you need the prayers of the church, whatever your need may be tonight, please come while together we stand, while we sing.
Standing on the promises of Christ, my